At 16, he lost everything. Not to war, not to crime, but to a family torn apart. His mother is gravely ill. A stepfather who charged him rent without a room. Kicked out whenever the bottle ran dry. No safe place, no way back. Now, multiply his story by tens of thousands. In the heart of Washington, where billion-dollar tech giants light up the skyline and lush forests stretch endlessly, a silent disaster unfolds. Why does one of the wealthiest, most beautiful states in America lead the nation in homelessness?
I've been homeless on and off since I was about 16. My mom was in a critical health condition and couldn't really take care of us.
Why do tent cities grow in the shadows of luxury towers? This is a story of hope lost, of resilience found, and of a ticking time bomb beneath the polished surface. Stay with us. On Roamkind, we tell the stories no one else dares to. Number 1. Statewide crisis by the numbers. Washington state is facing a full-blown crisis. Imagine over 200,000 residents teetering on the edge of homelessness or housing instability. That's not a distant problem. It's happening now. And this isn't just a blip. We're talking about a 10% increase in just 5 years. Shocking, right? Take a deep breath, because on one freezing night in 2024, the point-in-time count found 31,040 individuals without stable shelter across the state. Even more alarming, unsheltered homelessness, people living in tents, cars, doorways, jumped 26%. That's not progress. That's a warning siren. Think that hits only big cities like Seattle? Think again. Rural counties, Yakima, Whatcom, Stevens, they didn't just see increases. They saw double-digit growth. Yeah, even in small-town America, where you might expect the crisis to be contained. Not here. And families, children, case closed. Family homelessness climbed 15.5%. Meanwhile, Seattle public schools counted over 10,000 students without stable homes from school year 2021 to 2022. Too many kids on the move. Too many classrooms missing more than just pencils and paper. But wait, there's more. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The number of people uncounted, couch surfers, overcrowded homes, that group stays hidden, invisible. The real number could be twice as bad. As we move forward, remember, these aren't just numbers. They are lives, waiting. And unless we change the rules, the crisis will continue to grow. And so will the question, when will we finally step up? What happens in a state that's rich in tech, rich in nature, but poor in affordable homes? How does a place with such promise let thousands drift without a safe space to sleep? Let me know. How shocked are you by these truths? Number 2. Stories behind the numbers. But statistics alone don't tell the full story. Behind every bar on a graph is a life unraveling, or sometimes rebuilding. Meet Sophie, a single mother from Walla Walla. The pandemic wiped out her cafe job. Soon after, rent notices piled up. Then, eviction. For nearly a month, she and her 2 young kids lived in an old station wagon behind a gas station. No bathroom, no showers, just survival. A chance encounter with a mobile outreach van led to a shelter spot. Now, through a local housing program, they've moved into a small apartment. It's a fresh start, Sophie says, and for her children, a real bed every night. Then there's Carlos, an Army veteran in Tacoma. After deployments overseas, he returned with scars no one could see. Struggling with PTSD and alcoholism, he drifted onto the streets. For months, a cardboard mat under an overpass was home. The housing-first approach changed that. Carlos now lives in supportive housing, works part-time at a community garden, and mentors other veterans. "I didn't think I had a second chance," he says. "Turns out, I did." And Evelyn, 72, in Olympia. Years of mounting medical debt after her husband's cancer treatment left her with no choice but to leave their apartment. Friends' couches turned into shelters, then a church basement. But with help from a local clinic and subsidized housing, she's now in a cozy senior apartment. "For the first time in a long time, I feel safe," she says. These stories remind us, those facing the homelessness crisis are not numbers. They are neighbors, veterans, parents, and elders. And yes, targeted, humane programs work, because no chart captures the full measure of human courage. But in every rebuilt life, we see what's possible when compassion meets action. Have you seen a story like this? Someone in your town, a co-worker, an old friend, finding their way back from homelessness? Real people, real grit. If you believe stories like these deserve more light, comment shine, or respect, it matters. And remember, the next chapter of this story is just a click away. Stick around. Roamkind is only getting started. Number 3. Root causes of a worsening crisis. Picture this, a game of musical chairs, but with 5 million players and only 4 million seats. That is the harsh reality of housing in Washington state. The truth? We're missing 1 million homes over the next decade. Let that sink in. We need roughly 1.1 million new housing units between 2025 and 2035, with 650,000 of them for low-income families. But we're building just 46,400 units a year. That gap is yawning. It's not math homework, it's a widening housing abyss. Then there's rent. It's climbing 6 to 8% per year, like a relentless escalator heading upward. Wages? Stuck. Flat. Even families pulling mid-level salaries are struggling. They are trapped in a slow suffocation of opportunity, working harder just to tread water. Ask yourself, does that sound like a healthy economy? Minimum wage earners at about $20.76 an hour have to work 43 hours a week just to cover a one-bedroom in Seattle. That's dedication. Or desperation. Which would you call it? And it's not just the city slickers feeling the squeeze. In rural counties like Yakima and Stevens, outdated zoning rules and piles of red tape are choking any hope of new builds. We've got no-show developments everywhere. Once again, towns with fewer options and fewer voices watching as their neighbors slip into precarity. It's a vicious circle. Fewer homes means higher rent. Higher rent pushes more people into homelessness. Homelessness reduces the supply of stable homes. Round and round. We're stuck on a hamster wheel that only speeds up. How long can this cycle spin before something breaks? Can we step off the treadmill and start building bridges instead of barricades? Let's not tiptoe around it. This vicious cycle demands attention. Number 4. Housing and health. The overlooked connection. Home is not just where your Wi-Fi connects automatically. It's where your body can rest and repair. Without a roof, every cold night becomes a public health emergency. Think about it. Pneumonia doesn't care if you're sleeping in a tent or a studio. Homelessness doesn't just hurt pride, it steals time, safety, and health. Studies show unsheltered people face much higher rates of chronic illness, mental health struggles, and substance use disorders. They get sick more often. They die earlier. And the cost? Emergency rooms become their default doctors. Why is that? No fixed address means no regular checkups, no prescriptions filled, no follow-ups. Missed appointments lead to complications. A simple cold in a shelter can spiral into pneumonia, requiring a ventilator. You don't need dramatic language, just cold facts. It's not just about the individual. When someone with untreated health issues shows up in the ER, it drives up costs for everyone, even people with insurance. Also, people living outdoors often catch infections, injuries, asthma from exposure, frostbite in cold months. That burdens public clinics and hospitals. Communities pay the tab, even if they don't see the tents. What's the solution? Treat housing like a healthcare prescription. It's cheaper to prevent illness than to treat it. A warm, stable home lowers ER visits, reduces mental health decline, raises recovery rates for addiction. It's a health investment with real ROI. If we want to save lives, not just money, housing must be prescribed, not postponed. Because without a home, there's no foundation for health. Number 5. Who is most vulnerable? If you think homelessness has a type, think again. This crisis spares no age, race, or background, but some groups are teetering closer to the edge than others. Let's cut to the chase. Homelessness doesn't come with a single face, but certain groups, seniors, working families, people of color, and LGBTQ+ youth, are slipping further, faster. Take seniors first. These are folks living on roughly $1,500 per month. That's not a typo, just $1,500. With rents climbing year after year, many are stuck choosing between paying rent, buying food, or picking up their medicine. You wonder why the hospital shows up more than visitors. Because stability is disappearing by the day. Then there's the working poor. Imagine clocking in 2 jobs, working long hours, only to still face eviction. Data shows 40 to 60% of people experiencing homelessness are actually employed. They carry pay stubs, not signs, yet they're one paycheck away from the street. Do you know anyone who's working 2 jobs and coming home to nothing? Now, people of color. This isn't a distant history lesson, it's modern economics entangled in creeping inequality. Historic redlining meant entire communities were locked out of home ownership. Today, that legacy shows up in skyrocketing rates of homelessness in Black and Indigenous populations. The data isn't subtle. This is systemic, not random. What about LGBTQ+ youth and foster care alumni? Lack of family support and community stigma push them into survival mode early. They face more barriers in education, housing, medical care, even job hunts. Their voices, often unheard until they're facing life on the streets. It's heartbreaking, and it shouldn't be normal. Each story here isn't abstract. They're neighbors, friends, maybe even your co-worker. We're talking about humans navigating tightropes without safety nets. Does that feel distant or too close for comfort? Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the result of systemic neglect. And it's high time we reverse that. Quick pause. If this part got you thinking, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, which group do you think is most at risk of becoming homeless? Seniors, working families, people of color, or LGBTQ+ youth? And if you're new to Roamkind, welcome. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss more raw and eye-opening stories like this one. Now back to it. The next part might just show you something you've never considered. Number 6. state efforts and limitations. So what is the state actually doing about this homelessness crisis? The opening is strong because we're about to peek behind the curtain of big budgets and bigger promises. Washington has allocated between $598 million and $605 million through its capital budget for the 2025 to 2027 period to fund the Housing Trust Fund. That's new construction, plus preserving existing affordable housing statewide. Sounds solid, right? But here's the thing. Money doesn't always translate to impact. Programs like Apple Health and Homes aim to fuse housing with healthcare. Then there's House Bill 141, designed to fast-track affordable housing development, and Homes for Heroes, aimed at helping essential workers afford homes. On paper, it's a bouquet of targeted strategies. In real life, some blooms are still closed. Here's where limitations show up. A large portion of state funds still goes to emergency shelters and temporary services. They are crucial, but often serve as short-term patches, not long-term solutions. Meanwhile, the criminalization of homelessness, with rules against camping or loitering, remains in place. That can push people further into isolation, make it harder for them to access help and shelters. Administrative costs also consume a chunk of the budget, sometimes slowing delivery to frontline programs, and the impact? Uneven. In some counties, funding moves quickly. In others, it sits in waiting rooms of bureaucracy. So the question is, when you pour wine into a cracked glass, how much actually stays inside? Remember, these efforts are steps. But if we treat shelters as end goals rather than transition points, the homelessness crisis just keeps spinning its wheels. And the bigger question remains, are we ready to build a bridge instead of patching a fence? Number 7. Homelessness and education. Picture this. You're 8 years old, you've changed schools 3 times this year, and you're sleeping in a car. Now, try to focus on math homework. Now imagine a child with a backpack, but no place to unpack it. In October 2024, Seattle Public Schools recorded about 2,235 homeless students, a nearly 20% increase from the previous year. Statewide, over 42,000 students faced homelessness crisis in the 2022 to 2023 school year, making up nearly 4% of the entire student population. These aren't just numbers, they are kids trying to survive. Homelessness doesn't just steal a home, it disrupts education. Children bounce between schools, struggling to keep up. One week they're at school A, the next at school B. No stable desk, no routine. When every night means a new place to sleep, how do you concentrate on spelling or fractions? Without a fixed address, families face barriers enrolling in school or accessing help. Missed classes, missed meals, missed milestones, add in hunger, exhaustion, and constant stress, and the deck is stacked against them. And here's a truth. A child's future shouldn't depend on their zip code, but there's hope. Across the state, schools are stepping in. Mobile meals, tutors in shelters, outreach teams helping families enroll. When community and education meet, even small interventions can make a big difference. Imagine a child who finally unpacks their bag and stays in one classroom. That's progress. Homeless students are still students. They deserve stability, support, and a fair shot at success. Because behind every statistic is a child who dreams. And when we lift them, we lift our entire community. Number 8. Proven models for change. It all starts with hope. And in King County, that hope has a name: Housing First. The model isn't a feel-good slogan, It's a hard fact. About 79% of participants remain housed after 6 months. Fast forward to 88% after 5 years. That's not charity. That's data-backed impact. And yes, it hints at how bold investment and smart policy can rewrite lives. Why does this work? Simple. You can't treat trauma or addiction if someone's worrying where they'll sleep tonight. Give them a stable roof first, then layer on support. It's common sense, backed by science, yet oddly still debated. Now slide south to Clark County. They mixed housing, healthcare, and social services into a full recipe for recovery. No half-baked solutions here. Imagine getting a key to your own place, and right away, meeting with a doctor, a caseworker, even a job coach. That's what Clark County's integrated model delivers. And it works. People don't just stay housed, they rebuild lives. Meanwhile, in Denver, they took on veteran homelessness and nearly won. How? Not with flashy campaigns, but with gritty collaboration. Non-profits, city government, private businesses, all rowing in the same direction. The result? A steep decline in homeless veterans. Think about that. In an era when we often say government can't get things done, this cross-sector teamwork proved otherwise. And here's the kicker. None of these models are exclusive. They can be scaled. But scaling takes will. It takes money. It takes patience. Funding gaps remain wide. Bureaucratic red tape snarls progress. Stigma still lingers in public perception. The homelessness crisis won't end with slogans or single-point fixes. Yet, the blueprint is right in front of us. Proven, tested, human-centered. So why are we dragging our feet? Now over to you. Is this the moment we finally align political will, community action, and business investment? Would you support high taxes if they meant a safe home for everyone? One simple action. One powerful ripple. Comment, "Safe home," if you think everyone deserves one. And trust me, you'll want to see what's coming next. Number 9. The role of business. While tech giants count billions, many locals can't count on a bed. That contrast begs a question. What role should corporations play in addressing the homelessness crisis? For a state where Amazon, Microsoft, and hundreds of startups thrive, the answer matters. Corporations benefit from public infrastructure, educated workforce, and vibrant communities. They profit when cities grow. So why is so little reinvestment flowing into affordable housing or housing-first initiatives? Most companies limit support to small-scale philanthropy. A token donation to a shelter here, a weekend volunteer project there. It's enough to polish a corporate image, but does it move the needle on the ground? Imagine if a fraction of annual profits funded serious change. Just 1% of a company's earnings could build thousands of units for low-income workers. Think of the impact. Instead, multiple small checks have limited influence compared to the scale of the problem. Still, there are glimmers of hope. A few firms are partnering with local governments and non-profits to develop mixed-income housing. That model brings sustainability and community stability. Employees benefit from shorter commutes and reliable living situations. Homeowners and renters alike experience healthier, safer neighborhoods. It's a win-win. Businesses must view housing as an investment in community resilience, not a charitable side project. When companies invest in affordable homes, they invest in their own future workforce. They invest in a stable community. They invest in themselves. If companies could guarantee housing for their lowest-paid workers, what would that do for morale, for retention, for innovation, food for thought? Number 10. A call for systemic change. It's easy to feel helpless staring at this crisis, but here's the deal. The system that built it can also be rebuilt. The clock is ticking. Let's not sugarcoat it. This is a homelessness crisis that demands bold moves, not gentle nudges. Picture this: families sleeping in cars, seniors choosing between meds or rent, workers juggling shifts, yet unable to keep a roof over their heads. That's not luck. It's policy. It's design. And it can be redesigned. So what needs to change? First, we expand housing vouchers until every eligible family gets one. That means no more waiting lists stretching months, forcing people to fend for themselves on the streets. We make housing a recognized human right in state frameworks, not a privilege, a right. Then there's House Bill 141. It's not just a number. It fast-tracks affordable housing development in places that desperately need it. We follow through on this. Zoning changes, permit speed-ups, land use reforms, so those apartments get built, not delayed by red tape. Minimum wage, it must be a living wage, say $20 per hour, and indexed to inflation so it doesn't fall behind again. Because when working families still sleep in tents after 2 jobs, something is seriously off. We also scale up the Housing First model statewide. It's not charity, it's an investment with data to back it. Less strain on emergency rooms, jails, and social services. People housed stay housed. The ripple effects are real. But this isn't just on the government. Let's look at business. Tech giants and corporations flourish here. A fraction of profits could seed community housing funds. Imagine them pledging part of their tech wealth to build homes for their workforce. That's shared growth. Communities must step up too. Volunteer, mentor, donate, advocate. Poverty wins when apathy takes the stage. Your voice matters more than you think. Will we choose business as usual? Or build a Washington where a safe home isn't a privilege, but a promise? That chapter is still unwritten. So here we are, thousands without homes in the land of billion-dollar skylines. Washington's story isn't just about tents or empty promises. It's about how we define progress. A bigger GDP won't keep a child warm at night. Every number we saw today hides a face, a name, a story. The question is, what story will this state choose to tell next? Now I'd love to hear from you. In your view, what makes a city truly livable? Its skyline, or the way it cares for its most vulnerable? Drop your thoughts below. Here at Roamkind, we simply hold up the mirror. The reflection, that's for all of us to face.